Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Steve. Today I'm joined by Doug Davison from Smiteworks. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on board.
Thanks for coming on. It's been a while. It's been overdue. I recently lost my Facebook account and I with it most of my contacts. So
I think I remember when that happened. Yeah.
yeah. So then I have to go through my mental Rolodex or through like my phone and emails and be like, who haven't I had on yet?
Yeah.
And yeah, we've worked together in the past, and we've had you on in the past, so it's great to have you back, Doug.
Oh, thank you.
So what's going on with fantasy rounds nowadays and virtual tabletoping in the end times?
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about this kind of before the show, but yeah, with the pandemic and people social distancing, gaming has kind of changed, for a lot of people, and so gaming online ends up being the only way that people can really even get together a lot of times, and so a lot of people have kind of poured into this area. And so, us, and I'm sure all of the other VTTs that are out there are all just probably scrambling to keep up with the new influx of people and trying to deliver some easy way for people to get together and game and play that they couldn't before.
So did you conspire with Zoom to make this whole thing happen?
No, no. Yeah, Zoom is great. I mean, it's funny. It's like Zoom and Discord, and I don't really use Skype anymore, but we used to use Google Meet, all those kind of things. It's funny. I think there was a shortage, because of all this thing. There was a shortage of people to get those video cameras, like the little ones you sit on top of your monitor,
Oh yeah.
like that little Logitech C920 used to be like the cheapest kind of entry level, good quality video cam. And then they're like out of stock everywhere. And then some people like were buying them up and then like reselling them for like twice what they were originally and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, it's plus graphics cards because everybody's stuck at home. Gamers
Yeah.
are like, well, if I'm going to be stuck at home, I'm going to be playing a bunch of video games. And so like you can't get a lot of graphic cards. New ones come out, they sell out like within minutes. It's a pretty crazy time because everybody's stuck at home trying to entertain themselves.
Man bases. I've got people at work still waiting for the. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
The webcams. I was like, I should have readjusted my stock portfolio. Damn it.
Right. My wife and I were talking about it kind of when the pandemic started. We were like, you know what we should probably buy stock in is the diaper companies. Like 9 months down the road, there's
Oh
going to be a lot
yeah,
of
yeah.
babies popping out because people are stuck at home. They're not at work.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. We
Uh,
didn't. So we missed that opportunity, but
yeah, I don't have a stock portfolio, so being a full time YouTuber does not really allow for that.
I never understood the toilet paper thing. Like the toilet paper thing caught me by surprise still. So that was
Oh yeah,
still,
that was bizarre, right? It's like, I mean, there's
how much
ways
toilet paper do
around
you
that
need?
compared to like other things like food, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But that
So,
one was kind of like, really? Like toilet paper? We have a toilet paper shortage. That was completely unexpected. This whole year has been unexpected. So,
I mean, it
yeah.
kind of started with what, like Australia on fire, and it just like
Yeah.
kept going from there.
Yeah. It's just a craziest year. I saw there was like a Match.com commercial that was like it had the Tim Curry costume from Legend where he has got the big devil and the
Yeah,
big
yeah,
horns.
yeah,
He's the whole red outfit, but
yeah.
it's Ryan Reynolds is in it, and he's wearing that same costume, and he's sitting there and he's on his phone, and then it says, "Doom, you have a match." And he looks at his phone and it goes, "Oh," and then he comes up and she's like, "Are you user 34462?" And he's like, "Yes, but you can call me Satan." And then he's like, "Are you user 2020?" And she's like, "Yeah, you can just call me 2020." And then they're like, "Oh," and then they're like feeding each other strawberries and stuff like that. And then like they're sitting there on a park bench and like meteors are raining down from the sky. And they're like, "I wish this year would never end." And I'm like,
Oh
"Yep,
my!
that's pretty much sums it up." So
It feels like that. It feels like this year will never end, even though we're like 8 days
yeah.
away. You know.
Yeah, no, it's like you want to like knock on wood when you're like, "Hey, we survived 2020," and you're like, let's not count our chickens before they've hatched," you
At
know?
at midnight, instead of everyone finding someone to hug or kiss or whatever, which I mean, obviously we can't do much of that anyway. We're gonna be
Yeah.
like crawling under tables and diving for cover.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I don't know. I'm sure you remember Y2K. Everybody was like, "What's going to happen on Y2K? Everything's going to
Yeah.
collapse," you know. So I don't know if there's going to be that same level of anxiety kind of leading up to 2021, where we're just like, "What's it going to be like?" You know, is it suddenly going to get better? Is it just that change of one day going to suddenly make everything like, oh, the sun's
We
going to
still
come
have
out,
another.
the clouds are going to clear, little, you know, deers are going to run across the front yards.
We got another 3 6 months, I believe, before
Yeah.
it'll really get better.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
But at
And
least we
then
got a light at the end of the tunnel now, and it was
feels
accomplished
like it.
fast.
It feels like it is at least a light at the end of the tunnel. So,
Oh yeah, Rob.
uh,
Rob Tui linked it in the chat because my thoughts were I need to find this after this is done. No work will commence until I've seen this commercial you speak of.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah. So
You have to have a sense of humor. You know, it's like with all the stuff going on, if you don't have a sense of humor, it just makes everything more difficult. So, you know, some people get offended by, you know, having humor about anything like that. Like, oh, you can't joke about this kind of stuff. But I'm like, I'm the kind of guy that would joke at a funeral. You know, it's like, to me, it's like you just got to find some way to uplift people's spirits. You know,
yeah, like you can you can laugh or you can cry about things,
right?
right? I'd rather laugh. Crying
Yeah.
just feels like dehydrating myself slowly. So
Yeah.
why not? Um, you personally, do you find yourself gaming more or less or the same since the end times began?
Well, in the beginning, all my gaming completely dried up, and then partly because we were so busy with we had just launched Fantasy Grounds Unity in March also, and so we were kind of like, and that was in a early access beta, so we were kind of like really busy with all that, and then with all the new users coming on, we were working like insane hours, and then trying to staff up and add more people to the team to be able to support it all. And now that that's kind of settled down, I actually have been doing a little bit more gaming. So David, digital DM that works for us, he runs a game, and I play that on Saturdays as often as we can on that one. That's been a lot of fun to be a player, you know, again for a while. This is my mask here. I wear this mask on the stream sometimes. Oh, I don't know if you can see it here. I'll pull it in front. So
Yeah, I can
this
see, but they probably cannot. There you
this
go.
guy
Yeah,
right here, yeah. So this is like a little silicone mask that I got. So I wear that during the stream now.
you're
And
going all in.
you know, talking a little goofy goblin voice, you know, that's probably really grating to people. So I don't know. Maybe that's not a good idea. But yeah, I do that, and you know, I you know, try to, you know, relax and take some time off, play some you know, video games. And I do a lot of painting. I did a lot of painting this year. So
Painting or minis?
miniature painting. Miniature painting, yeah. So yeah, stocking up on that. Games Workshop sucked me back in.
Yeah.
So you know, I got their new version of their system that came out, and just been, you know, priming and painting a lot of figures. And my daughter likes to do like craft work. So like she goes in and she's always watching all these like YouTube videos about how to, like, I don't know, do goofy stuff like, oh, I'm gonna take a squishy doll and repaint it and do all this kind of stuff. So she has like her little paint stuff, and then I'll sit down next to her and do my little paint stuff, which is, you know, I can't say it's any less geeky than what she's doing. So, you know, we have like a bonding moment of just sitting there and doing that kind of stuff.
Crafting together.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I I am not much of a mini painter at all. I actually like it was a couple of years ago. I went to Origins, and that was like the first time I ever painted a mini.
Did you
so,
do like one of the speed painting type things where they,
so yeah, Realm Smith had invited me on as a guest to one of their paint and takes,
yeah,
and
those are great. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, I'm just like, give me a can. Can I just dunk?
Dip it. You know,
Yeah.
there are, if you're not a great painter, there are actually cans of stuff you can dip your minis in that make them
Uh-huh.
look amazing. So you basically, you kind of slather on their base paints, and you at least kind of put some paint in the general area of where it's supposed to go, like for their skin color and their, you know, their outfits, that kind of stuff. But then you just dip it in, like they have a quick shade type thing. It's from, actually from the company, it's called Army Painter.
Uh-huh.
You can just seriously dip the miniature in and then kind of shake off the excess and then let it sit, and it just like sinks into the cracks, and suddenly it'll make your paint job go from like a 2 to like maybe a 6 or a 7, and it'll
Nice.
like tabletop ready. You know, you can pretty much use it almost there. Only problem is they stink. It's because it's like a varnish mix. It's almost
Okay.
like a min wax with a little bit of paint pigment mixed in. is pretty much what I think it ultimately is. But it works
So you're
wonders.
gonna
You
have
do
to
want to,
freeze your minis.
you got to let them sit like outside and air out, or in the garage or something like that. You don't want them in the house because they smell, they'll smell really strong. It takes a while for that smell to kind of go away.
Yeah, I mean, I was so happy when with third edition they launched pre-painted minis,
Oh yeah, pre-painted minis are great. All the WizKids stuff,
and
stock up on all those.
the WizKid stuff is getting really good too. Like initially when 5e launched and they launched the WizKids line, I was not impressed.
Yeah,
And this is not a knock on WizKids at all because they were doing Pathfinder figures that looked great. So
yeah,
clearly the WizKids was not the problem. But now like the minis are getting bigger. You got dragons that are actually dragon sized.
yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah. But then you run out of store. Then you have to look at, how do you store all these things? How do you make
Yeah.
them? How are they stored and organized in a way that you can quickly find what you want? So like I had a bunch of the pre-painted minis too, and a lot of like just the or the pewter ones and stuff like that I painted and stuff. And then it was a matter of like, okay, so I have like all these little drawers. These are all of my like my elves. I've got a whole drawer full of just elves that I can pick from, or I've got like undead and stuff like that. And then you start getting more and more minis, and then they're like on top of each other. And next thing you know, you're having to dig through them. And
Yeah.
so, so in that respect, the digital gaming has been a great boon because now you can just say, "Show me all my goblins," and then you just grab a goblin. Makes it a little bit easier.
That is definitely a lot easier. I know Ted has got like just tons of bins and he has them sorted, and
Yeah,
which would help somewhat, But then it's like after the game, they all get scooped together.
yeah. Then you have to, have to resort them afterwards, or yeah.
Yeah,
It's and you spend a ton of money. I mean, it's not just the minis, but seriously, you can spend more on the stuff to organize them,
yeah.
plus the amount of space they take up. Just to keep it all together. Like then you're over at like Home Depot, and everybody else is buying stuff to renovate their bathroom, and you're like, how can I like have a shelving unit for all of my all of my figures and stuff like that? So it's kind of funny.
Yeah, the what is he? He's got the man. I don't even know what you call them. They're like little, I don't know, like
Like little
plastic
bins.
cabinet. Yeah, the
Yeah,
bins.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You hang them on the thing. Yeah, those were for originally. Those were for like your garage
Oh yeah,
hardware
yeah.
shop
For
area
hardware and stuff. Yeah.
for all of your like screws and your nuts and bolts and all that kind of
Nah,
stuff.
like you
But
can buy like these little
the
caddies with
bigger one.
drawers.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, now at Walmart pretty cheap, and that's what I actually have a bunch of those, but it's all like Heroescape stuff. I don't know if
Hmm.
anybody remembers Heroescape.
So here's the funny story about Fantasy Grounds way back in the day. When I first got Fantasy Grounds, our token bag was actually just a token bag.
Yeah,
And you would open it up, and all of the images of the tokens were just thrown in there. And it was like opening an actual bag where you couldn't see what anything was, and you were like,
sounds terrible.
it was horrible. And you had to actually, you could hit a shuffle button, which would be like you would kind of just stir them up, and then
Yeah.
maybe the one you wanted would pop up to the top. I'm like, that was the dumbest system in the world, but it was kind of hilarious at the same time. It's like, yeah, I think you took the like recreation of the tabletop experience a little bit too literally on that one. So
Let's incorporate all the worst parts.
so one of the first things I did was like, okay, well, let's at least split them out so it's in a nice gridded format where you can actually see what all the different things are, and you can scroll up and down and access them, and
Can you
that kind of
put
thing.
that
So,
back up for like one day a year,
oh
like
my
April
gosh,
Fools?
April
Uh,
Fools, yeah, I could roll that out for April Fools. It'd be hilarious. People were like, what the heck? Yeah.
yeah, until you see like all the cancels.
You see, when you move your token across the map, maybe the token actually falls over on its side or something like
Yeah,
that. Like certain amount of realism is useful and fun, but too much can be bad for sure.
not so much.
Yeah.
I've been saying, I've talked to different people about, you know, gaming, during the pandemic, and I think it's going to be great afterwards. We're going to have so many more people that are going to game online and stay online because, like they had there's no excuse to not break your own inertia, and I think
Exactly.
like that's like the hardest thing is like once they do it once, they're like, oh, that wasn't so bad,
Yeah.
and,
And
and
every time
then
they play, it gets a little bit easier, and then they get more and more comfortable with it.
and then obviously like you have a bunch of VTTs that are great, but even like even a lot of our games we just open a Zoom window
Yeah.
and we'll do stuff like Ted still likes to craft stuff, and And he's like, well, I'm crafting all this stuff and we're playing, but I'm not using it. So like he started just setting up an extra camera,
Camera. Yeah.
and I mean, sure, it's not perfect. It's not as good
Yeah.
as being there in person, uh,
Yeah.
and also doesn't work as well as some of the VTTs in the sense that you when on a VTT or at the table, you can just look and see and go, oh, that's 15 feet away or that's 20 feet away. With the camera angles, it can be deceptive and it's a little tougher. And we
Yeah.
still have to remember to not point into the screen and be like, move my guy here.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we had I was in a in-person game back when I lived in Kentucky, and the guy, and you can still find it on YouTube. It's called Steading of the Hill Giant.
Mm-hmm.
Our DM actually he got a really massive gaming table that was a beautiful table. He built the entire Steading of the Hill Giant. He hand whittled all the wood pegs and put the little fencing palisade around the wall or whatever. He built all that. He built all the structures, and he had it so that he could move walls around and all this kind of stuff. Beautiful, beautiful setup. And I don't know how long it took him to build this thing, but everything was like aged and weathered and it looked fabulous, right? And so we get there to the steading and we're playing the game and everybody's all excited to kind of play the game. We have our miniatures and our figures, we're all moving around. And so we're deciding how we're going to like get into the steading to rescue the bad guy, rescue the captured villagers and stuff like that. We go around the back somehow, and I was playing a druid and it was a high level campaign. So we like warp wood, we get through the back of the steading, we fight some people in the kitchen, and right next to the kitchen there was a stairwell. So we open the stairwell and it goes down to level 2. He had not built level 2. He spent months building level 1. And then we're like, oh, we should all go downstairs. That's probably where and then he was just like, oh gosh, like no. So
Level 2 does not exist.
level 2 does not exist yet in this world. Yeah. So
Oh my
so
god.
basically,
It was a
yeah.
video game, right? When you hit the edge of the screen.
Yeah, yeah, basically. Sorry, you've reached the edge of the world. So basically, we said, let's explore level 1, before we do anything else. So yeah, we kept it on level 1, and
Yeah.
that game never finished. He never actually built level 2. Uh, we got so far along, and then
There you go. In your
life
face in
happened, the
person
game happened.
games.
Yeah,
That never
it was
happens
fun.
on Fantasy Grounds.
Yeah, you could make level 2 a little bit easier. I mean, I guess there's
Yeah.
still a possibility if you're playing Adventure Path or something like that, you get to the end of it and it's not out yet. But I don't play that fast, so it's not really a problem for me.
Yeah. The yeah, one of my things is like I see games like that and I'm like, wow, this looks amazing to play in, but I'm as a DM, I'm like, that looks like a nightmare to run, and that's a lot of stuff. And all I can
Yeah.
ever think about is like the players not using the stuff you made and just be like, nah, we're gonna hang out in the tavern.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, that happens in the digital world too. Like you'll
Yeah.
create all these cool encounters and then they decide they never use it. So I always try to make them up in such a way that I'm like, well, I'm going to be able to reuse this scenario one way or the other. You guys may not know it, but when you turn the corner in that alley, guess what's going to happen? So I'm going to
Dragon's
find a
Lair.
way. I'm going to find a way to sneak my stuff in there somehow if I invested much time on it. I'll just change it, modify it down the road. Like if you skipped it for now, then guess what? 3 levels down the road, you're going to find some other way to bounce back into the same area.
Yeah, I mean, if you kind of like create your encounters modularly, it's a
Yeah.
lot easier to do that with. Um, and I feel like the way Matt Mercer does his terrain pieces is like better. Like that, like that's kind of the way we game anyway, and then the way he does it is a neat innovation of just having it on a piece of plywood or something, and you can just pull it out when it's time when you need it,
Yeah. 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 For sure.
as
Well, he
opposed
probably
to
has
the
people building his stuff for him.
maybe
He's at
I
that
feel
level.
like I mean he has the advantage of everyone probably sends him everything, but I feel like
Yeah.
if you're using that stuff, you probably like building it too.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I'm
he does
sure.
have the advantage of going picking up the phone or calling an assistant
Yeah. Yeah.
over and be like, "Yo, I need this, make it happen," and he
Yeah.
doesn't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I remember old grid paper. You pull out the old grid paper, and then the DM's like, well, it's 20 foot by 30 foot, and then a 5 foot hallway that extends for another 40 feet. And then you just
Yeah,
draw out the little grid spaces, and everybody looks at him like, okay. And then the DM's like, no, 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 that's not it. That's not at all what it looks like. And then they erase everything, and then they redo it for you. And then, so I think gaming's come a long way. And
yeah,
ultimately, if you look for the silver lining with this whole pandemic thing, is that when people start gaming like an online and they see that it's easier to just be at home, like, before the pandemic, people would come home from work and a lot of people would turn on their Xbox or their PlayStation and they'd sit down and play a game to relax, right? But people never really did that with D&D as much. Like some people did, but a lot of people would be like, no, that's a whole different thing. I have to like go drive across town, or I've got a plan for it and we have, this set time. And so I think it's a lot easier to have almost like a pickup game style thing where you're like, hey, let's try to play on Tuesdays or and Thursdays if we're available. And then you just hop on, you get home, you just turn on your computer and you just all connect. So I mean, it's getting closer to that state to where people can game as freely and play like role-playing games like they did other kind of games. We're not there. We got a long way to go before we get to that point, but I think this year has helped move us a lot closer to that area.
Yeah, absolutely. So how long before Fantasy Grounds moves into the VR space?
So I think so. I like VR quite a bit. My son loves VR. He does stuff in VR all the time. I still don't think they really have the large enough demographic to really make it viable. So that's the big impediment to adoption, because if you imagine, the problem with VR is that everybody that's gaming has to have VR and they have to all be the same kind of thing. And so there's some compatibility issues between different VR companies. Oh, are you an Oculus user? Are you a this kind of user, or whatever, Windows mixed reality, or this one or that one or whatever? And they're all a little bit different. They have to at least be able to work hand in hand. Plus it adds an extra $400 or $500 on top of a computer that has to be sufficient enough to run it, and that's before you even start the game. So I mean, it's a cool kind of thing, but I think it's going to be a niche of a niche. It's just you're drilling down farther and farther and farther to where, I don't think it's going to get that global adoption really that you see with other sort of options.
Yeah, we've talked about it a little bit on here in the past because I know there's like virtual movie screenings you can do through
Yeah,
VR,
yeah,
and so that got us thinking about like virtual conventions of actually like being able to be on the con
yeah.
floor.
The difference is I don't know if you've how much VR stuff you've really played,
Zero.
but wearing the headsets for an extended period of time is not as comfortable. I mean, I think when they get lighter and lighter,
Yeah,
but they're a little bit heavy, so they wrap around. They have to enclose out the rest of the world, so you can't really see what else is going on. I like the idea of augmented reality better because it has the potential to be lighter weight, and you don't lose the rest of your surroundings. So like, one of the things, same thing with people do VR stuff because you can do 3D and other kind of stuff like that with 3D movies and stuff too within VR space. But like, I can't imagine sitting and watching and with my family and friends all putting my headset on and doing an entertainment kind of thing. Doesn't seem, I mean, that seems kind of weird to me still. So
yeah.
versus if you just put on like a 3D glasses and at least you're in the same room, you can still see your friend right next to you in real space and you can kind of see your surrounding, but you still see this other thing. To me, that's more appealing. It's just, I think we have a ways to go on that still too. The technology is still growing by leaps and bounds, but has a ways to go, I think, before we get to that.
Have you seen some of the AR Kickstarters?
I've not seen any recently, no, but we have kind of not partnered up, but we've had a lot of interactions with like Tilt 5, which
Mhm.
comes out of Valve and Steam, and so they've got a lot of stuff going on with their Kickstarter that we said, hey, we'd be happy to work with your team. Once you get it far enough along to start looking at putting Fantasy Grounds on it, and then doing some prototyping at least with them. But I know they're pretty far behind schedule right now too.
Yeah, I'd seen a couple ARs, and most of them were like you look through your phone
Yeah,
and through the camera, and then there were like cards or tokens that you put down
yeah, yeah.
that would
That's
have
definitely cool.
whatever.
You definitely have to look through another device to do it. So yeah, you could hold your phone up, but I don't know that you really want to be like holding your phone up to look at the thing, to look through your
Yeah,
phone to the thing all the time. So that's why the appeal of having just a real lightweight glasses that you're looking through and then you see it change your interface. To me, that's pretty appealing.
or yeah, or glasses or something.
Yeah, some kind of real lightweight glasses.
I think we'll get there eventually. And also, too, like technology moves really fast in comparison
Yeah.
to before. So, like something that might seem 5, 10 years away might be half that.
Sometimes. Yeah, yeah. But sometimes it goes the other direction.
Well,
sometimes,
that's true. We still don't have
sometimes
flying cars.
yeah, never did get the flying cars or half the things that, like we all thought we were going to be living the Jetsons life by now,
Yeah, that was the reference I was going to go to.
What
You're aging yourself. You're dating
was it
yourself.
wasn't Jetsons like supposed to be set in 2020? No, I have no idea, but I don't know. It's probably wasn't set that far in the future. I know like Back to the Future 2, I think Back to the Future 2 was that already happened, right? That timeline already passed us by, and we still don't have flying skateboards yet and other flying
Thundar the
cars.
Barbarian was set in 2020.
Thunder the Barbarian, I love that show. That show was great. That
Don't go
they
back
need
and
to do
watch it.
more with
It's
that.
terrible.
Is it terrible?
It is.
Yeah, yeah,
I tried to make my kids watch it, and
yeah.
we got like a minute in, and my son is like, the graphics are terrible. Like everything is graphics to them.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like they have no concept of like special effects. It's like everything is graphics.
Yeah. No, I like that one. That one was what Gleek and Gloop or something
No,
like
no,
that.
that was
Or
the
is that? Oh, that was the
Herculoids.
Herculoids. Oh, okay.
Maybe,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
There's a
yeah.
couple there's a couple of them that are like very similar. Came out at the same time, like Herculoids, Space Ghost. I feel like there was like one other. Thunder the Barbarian had um what was it? It had like the lion guy kind of, and
Okay, with the big mane. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And the energy swords that were not lightsabers, but they were energy swords.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We're
All
actually
right.
playing a game right now using Cipher System, kind of like loosely based off of that and the
Cool.
old Flash Gordon, uh, and then a hint of 2020 itself, sprinkled through
Yeah, I
it.
liked parts of Flash Gordon, but I thought it was kind of silly at the same time. Even when I was a kid, I was like the whole scene where he grabs a football, he's playing football and knocking guards over and stuff. I thought was pretty
Yeah, it was
good.
cheesy for sure.
Yeah.
It was tons of cheese. Then, but there was also the Flash Gordon cartoon that didn't have that like cheese to it.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if I ever watched that one too much, but yeah, good
Uh,
stuff though.
but yeah, it was like the best we had at that time. So,
Yeah. Do you use old cartoons that you remember from childhood? Do you use those for your campaign ideas sometimes?
oh yeah, absolutely. And I think they're like ingrained more too because like we didn't have VOD. It was like your whole week was like gearing up to this one day when they'd run the cartoons you wanted. And
Yeah.
God forbid the freaking president had something stupid to say that you did not care about because like
Yeah.
none of your cartoons were going to play that day.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, yeah, you didn't have TiVo. You just missed it. That's what people
Uh,
nowadays, these kids nowadays don't realize. Like back in the day, if you missed your TV show, guess what? You just missed your TV show. Like
yeah.
you couldn't
Well,
even go back and watch it after the fact unless you had the VCR set to record.
and also you have like Cartoon Network and these other networks where they just loop cartoons throughout the whole entire day,
Yeah.
which was not a thing. It's like you had certain blocks of time.
I would always watch the Saturday cartoon. I'd always wake up early, watch the Saturday morning cartoons, and then it seemed like the next half would either switch to like old Godzilla movies
Yeah.
or like martial arts movies where like,
No, it was all the same day. It was cartoons, wrestling. You had the kung fu theater, and you had
yeah,
the monster shows.
yeah.
So,
Oh, those
yeah,
are great
Saturdays
times.
was good. It was also very rough for my younger brothers because of there was way too much action oriented things going on. And
And you would
it,
want to try it out on your younger brothers. You're like, oh,
yeah,
check out this new WWF move I could do to you. And then
right. Well,
you'd pile
either
drive
that or you're
over.
watching kung fu theater and like I can do that. Come here, little brother.
Yeah.
It was a different time. It's amazing that any of us survived to adulthood.
I know. We didn't have seatbelts in cars. We'd ride in the back of trucks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
It's good
remember
stuff.
going to the movies, um, in an Omni, and like 14 people being crammed into that thing like a clown car.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, that was how you got held in place, right?
yeah,
I
you
mean, that
didn't
was
need
kind of like a
seatbelts at
safety
that
mechanism
point. Yeah.
because you couldn't physically move. Even if you hit something at 40 mile an hour, you weren't going to budge because you were so packed in there.
Now the downside to that was when the actual car itself did budge, you were on the other side of that. But also, the cars were still made of metal back then too, so
Yeah,
that kind of helped as well.
yeah. Steel frames, that
We
Detroit
don't need no
steel.
stinking crumble zones.
Yeah. Yeah, if
So
you smacked a tree back then, that you had a chance, you might knock the tree over. Yeah,
that's true. Now crumples right around it,
yeah,
but I digress. Yeah, things are a bit safer now.
yeah,
Also, you're not packing people in the car, smoking in there, and drinking while you're driving. So
yeah. Right. I remember that secondhand smoke. My mom used to smoke when I was growing up, and just constantly just had the little window rolled down. You'd stick your head out like a dog trying to catch a
get
fresh
fresh
air.
air.
Oh
uh,
man.
Speaking of childhood, how old were you when you started gaming?
It was pretty youngish. I was maybe, I don't know, 9, 10 maybe. I might have been a little bit older than that. I would say maybe 10 would be my guess.
And
It
how did
was
you get into gaming?
I found the red box. So we used to go up to like the bookstore, which was like Walden Books, I think back in the day.
I was going to ask, was it Walden Books or B Dalton? Because it was
It
like
was
one of
one of
those
those
two.
two. It was, yeah, we would alternate between those two. And they had the little carousel stand with the D&D modules up there, and the covers of those always kind of grabbed my attention. I was like, oh, this looks cool. This looks like this kind of stuff I'd be watching on my Saturday afternoon mornings and stuff like that, And so I always wanted to grab those, and my parents would never really get it for me. And then one day I got dragged out with my mom to go to like a yard sale, and they had somebody was like selling all their kids like D&D stuff.
Yeah.
So and so they were like, just take it. So I think I bought like the red box for like 25 cents or something like that. And I just asked my, hey mom, can I have a quarter? Or I was seriously cheap. It was like 25 cents. That's what I seem
Yeah.
to remember. Because I think the mom that was of the kid just didn't want him having it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was like, all
Praise
right.
Jesus. Thank God for the satanic panic.
Probably. So that's what got me into it, is that I was able to get it for cheap. I didn't even ask my parents. I just said, hey, can I have a quarter? And then they're like, I guess, here you go. Shut up, and get back in the
Yeah.
car. And so, yeah, I got that home and then read through it. And, uh, I just like the whole idea of it. So to me, like just being able to like equip your character for this adventure, just and all the thoughts about, oh, what's my character going to go explore and, uncover and stuff like that. And then the very first adventure, like you get like a warrior and or I forget what all the class, I don't even remember what all the classes were, but so you equip your warrior, you're like, oh, I got a long sword, and you manage to get like maybe some chain mail or all this kind of stuff that you're like getting all ready to go, spend all your starting money on all this metal equipment to protect you, and then you walk into the freaking dungeon and there's a rust monster, and he just like degrades all your crap right away. You're like, what the hell, like this is, yeah, that was funny. It
The
got me
good old
hooked though.
days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember hanging out in B Dalton and Walton Books and just like lingering in those sections until my grandparents would buy me something.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's how you would find groups. That was the looking for group section.
Yeah.
You would just camp out in that part of the B Daltons, and you would just wait for other people to come by and start looking at the same books, and you'd kind of do this whole thing where you're like, you act like you're not really looking at it, but you're kind of like looking at it, or you kind of glance over and you're like, oh no, they're looking at vampire stuff. I'm not into that right now, or and then they would look and they'd be like, oh, you're using the same book, and they're like, oh, do you play too? And then you'd end up like striking up a conversation, and then that's how you'd find groups and stuff. I know when I moved from Kentucky to Illinois, it was the same thing. I was looking at miniatures and D&D modules and stuff like that. And then, some guy was like, oh, do you play? And I'm like, yeah, I just moved to the area. And he invited me to his group, so that's kind of how you would form groups.
I don't remember stepping foot into a game store until I was an adult.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of the comic book stores started carrying gaming stuff. They'd have like a tiny section. But it
Yeah.
was still like better to go to like Walden Books or B Dalton.
Yeah. Cause it was just bright. Like they had good lighting. So like, it
Yeah.
wasn't like a dark, scary kind of place. And like you talked about, like, a lot of places, people would smoke and stuff in there too. And it would be like a smoky, hazy, dark environment, like, and you're like, oh, okay. I can't imagine that was good for the condition of the comic books and stuff like
No,
that.
not at all. Like
Yeah.
like the comic book store that we had in our town, and it was like the only one within like a 5 town radius probably. It was like half of it was comic books, and then the other half was like collectibles.
Yeah.
So it was kind of so it was almost like two separate stores like put together.
Yeah.
Because like when I say collectibles, like antiques, dolls, and you
Oh
know,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So not even
totally
related to gaming, not gaming collectibles like the things.
no,
Well,
no, not
there
gaming
weren't collectibles
collectors.
because that was the start of it. Like, yeah, the stuff
Yeah,
that you could buy now is the collectible.
yeah. So yeah, and then like and like as other ones would pop up, and still like they were always kind of like dark and dingy,
Yeah,
and very unwelcoming. And it's like if they did have windows to let light in, they would plaster
yeah. There'd be no
posters
light.
all
Yeah,
over them.
yeah. They still do that. A lot of them still
Yeah,
have that. Their windows are basically every little inch of window space has to become their advertisement space. Like, oh, look at this new thing coming out, and
yeah,
Magic the Gathering has a new set coming out, and this comic book's got this and whatever. Yeah, but yeah, it does cut out all the light. No light.
yeah. So we finally got one in our town that was it was like a gaming store slash comic book store. Like they didn't carry back issues; they only carried like what was current. But it had
Yeah.
like an open floor plan. The windows had stuff in them, but they weren't completely covered, so a lot of light came in. So it was like bright, well lit, bunch of tables. So much so, like my father-in-law, who is not a gamer, was like, "Oh, this is actually a really nice store. I like visiting here." He would do like different fundraisers, so he'd go around to a lot of the local businesses.
Okay. Yeah.
And like when we mentioned that one, he's like, he had a lot of good things to say about it because it was very like inviting and a place that you would actually want to go into.
Well, and not just a place you would want to go into, but now, as a parent, I have to think about things like it has to be a place I'd feel comfortable dropping my kids off for a while I go to this next, the store next to it.
Yeah,
So like, I can't, I can't imagine some of these stores, unfortunately, like if I'd be out there with my kid, and they're like, hey, I want to go in there. Like, yeah, maybe not. Let's just keep moving. Don't make eye contact. Just keep going.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. They're admiring your beard in the chat.
Oh, my start of a scruffy beard. Yeah.
Yeah,
This is about as far as it'll go. It doesn't make it any farther than this.
yeah. I start out like that, and after a day or so, and then I wake up like this.
So we have some excellent beards on our staff. I am not one of those excellent beards, but yeah, we have a couple people on our staff. David, he's often had a really nice, impressive beard. Derek, I swear, he shaved his beard when he was having to wear masks because he couldn't
Yeah,
fit it over his, fit the Corona mask over his beard,
yeah, yeah.
and like he decided, oh, I'll grow it back out. I think it took him like 2 days. Yeah, and then he's back. He's got this full big beard again. I'm like, yeah, I could let this is almost a week of growth for me right here. This is about as much as it gets.
They got so I don't know. You said mask, and it made me think of this thing I saw the other day called a blank. It's on Kickstarter now, and it's like almost it looks like a helmet, right? That splits down the center and it goes
Oh
on
my
your
gosh, yeah,
face.
that's funny. That's so funny. Yeah,
It seems a little bit over. It seems a bit overkill, but if they
yeah.
put the right thing on it, I think I might be into buying it and just wearing it around my house.
I never leave my house,
Yeah,
so I don't even hardly. Well, if I do, I'm going to just pick up my kid or something like that, because my kids are in school. They actually have in-person school here, so it's for the most part it's been kind of working. But they, if anybody gets sick, then they basically anyone that they sat next to gets quarantined as well. So they
uh,
basically they nip it in the bud right away. Like, all right, for 2 weeks, or you have to like go get tested, and then still wait a little bit of time for the quarantine, to make sure that your symptoms don't show up after the fact. And they keep doing that. And so, again, knock on wood, we're almost to 2021. We've made it through without any major incident, and then just it's been pretty good, I think, for them because they just that interaction is that's a big part of it. And that's why I think online gaming is so important, is because people need interaction. It's like you can't, I mean, there's a reason why the worst thing that they can do to people when they're in prison is put them in isolation, right? That's like only the most hardened, worst people in the world get put in like solitary confinement. And that's basically what we're all kind of been in solitary confinement this year. So probation starts soon, I think, for everybody. So congratulations.
yeah,
Talk to your parole officer and be on your best behavior. It's good
We're
stuff.
doing like so they we're doing virtual here.
Hmm.
They were doing hybrid
Yeah.
for a little bit, but it didn't last very long.
Yeah, I know a lot of places do a hybrid, and then that way they can, in
Control.
theory, they cut down the amount of people that are in at the same time, kind of thing. They
Yeah.
can, but yeah,
So do they
it's
do anything
rough.
special? Like do they use those big plastic like retail shields or
I think they all have to wear their masks throughout the day. They limit the number of kids that can sit at lunch together at any given table to provide, certain amount of spacing and stuff like that. They have the hallways are all directed in like certain directions. You can only follow past certain ways so that the
Mhm.
people aren't crossing each other, you know, I
Yeah.
guess. I don't know. And then they have hand sanitizer everywhere. They don't have the fountains. Fountains are all turned off so that, kids aren't. Fountains were always, if you think about it, a little bit kind of gross because, like you
Yeah.
get that one kid that just sits there and he's dripping all of it back down on top of the fountain
Or
head.
puts their mouth on it.
Oh, I know. I'm like, oh, yeah. Whenever we'd be out at a park and my kids wanted to use the fountain, I'm like, yeah, can you make it home? We'll be home in 5 hours. Just suck it up.
Yeah. We'll rehydrate you later.
Yeah. Stop crying. That's just going to dehydrate you more.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I got to go well, I did go the other way before the pandemic is like just roll them around in the germs. They'll be fine.
Yeah. It used to be the mentality on stuff,
Not
definitely
so much now.
perspectives change.
Yeah. So my son is in college this year. So he's in his second
College has got
year.
to be rough. Yeah. And so was last year his senior year?
No, last year. So he's 20 now. So this is year two
Okay.
of college.
Okay. Yeah.
And like he started regular college and then it switched at
So
spring break. Like they extended spring break. Then it went virtual. Then even that, they're like coming back for labs. And then they, like one lab partner would be there one week and the other. And they
yeah.
completely did away with that. And then when he was like picking his classes, it's just like, just picked
Hmm.
all virtual ones. For him,
Yeah.
nothing's really changed. Like even his socializing is mostly on the computer anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. It's probably a little bit easier because of that, because the kids are on the computer all the time.
Like he's always playing Minecraft and League of Legends, and
Hmm.
he just recently started a 5e Star Wars game.
Yeah.
So
Minecraft is so funny because my littlest one, she plays, well, both my kids play Minecraft actually, but my 7-year old, so she's playing and she's telling me all about golems and stuff like that, and I'm like, oh, like about golems? She's like, oh yeah, iron golem, and I'm like, okay, all right. So then I'm like, do you know like what all you know about it? So we're like having this conversation about different monsters and stuff like that, and I'll like fill her in on what the mythology of it is, and I'm like, well, the golem is from Jewish mythology, and then she's like, oh, it is, and then so we have this whole little like back and forth kind of thing, and it's pretty fun. It's good stuff.
yeah, he's slowly but surely you're gonna work them in via Minecraft.
Yeah, well, and my kids have like beholder shirts and stuff like that. So I always try to introduce them to all the D&D stuff. So I'm proud when they recognize monsters at sight. They're like, oh yeah, that's such and such, or they
Do they
know
have any
the
interest in
differences.
gaming?
A little bit. They're definitely more on the visual video game side of things. That they like that a lot more. I know my son is definitely more interested now that like Fantasy Grounds Unity's got some of the lighting stuff and the line of sight stuff built in. It makes it more video gamey for him,
Yeah.
and he's a lot more interested in, okay, I can build stuff now and looks cool. But he does a lot of 3D stuff. He's always building his own little 3D worlds, and he does it in Unity and then plays it on his VR headset and stuff like that. So I
Okay.
try to just encourage him to do that kind of stuff.
You're gonna be able to put them to work soon.
Yeah, yeah, that's what he's wanting to. But I'm like, well, you got to go work someplace else. You can't just go right to work for your dad. That's weird. You gotta go earn your credit somewhere else. So that looks, you know, none of that
No.
nepotism here.
Oh, nice. That's funny. Although I've seen like the reverse nepotism where like the child works for the company, but they're treated the worst and paid the least.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's fairly rare, but I've also seen it.
I had that a little bit. So when I was growing up, so my dad was he was a manager that did computer programming, and
Yeah.
back in the day, and so when I got in high school, right when I graduated high school, I got a job there as a computer operator, and I used to use computers at home and stuff, so it was very well within my proficiency thing. And so I would start using that, and there were other software developers around and books like on how to program and code stuff. And so, I'd had a little bit in school and high school, but high school level. And then I would just read all these books while we would just basically push buttons. We'd load disk and run stuff, and things used to take forever. So we'd have to wait for a program to finish running, and then you swap out the media and put a new thing in, and then hit another button. But a lot of it was just kind of sitting there, not doing much. We'd actually run like 4 or 5 computers at once because they were so slow. You could actually run 4 or 5 computers and then just go from one to the next. And so eventually I got to where I'd program and I'd do some more stuff and play around with it. But I was always like, the people that I work with and directly knew that I was like good at all my different jobs and stuff. But there were other parts of the company where I'm like, yeah, they probably just see me as being like the son of Dan Davison, and that's the only reason why I'm here, kind of thing. And so like as soon as I had an opportunity to, I was like, I got to get out from underneath this and go, work at another company so that people aren't assuming that, oh, you're only here because your dad, kind of thing.
My
So
my last real job, I worked in heavy construction, and it was two brothers that ran the company, and they used to work for their dad, and he was super cheap, would underpay them,
yeah,
and overwork them, and like people like they would basically run the business, and like their guys would come to them and be like, hey, can we get a raise? He's like, I can't even get a raise, I don't know how I'm going to get you one.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So eventually they went out and started their own business and put him out of business.
yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of family businesses that really work very well. Like I've got
uh,
some guys that do plumbing for us because we had a lot of when we bought this house, we got a lot of projects. I was telling you about it earlier, but
yeah, yeah,
plumbing issues, we had a lot of like crazy plumbing issues. And so we have this, it's a father and two sons plumbing business, and they're phenomenal. And they can, you can tell the father basically imparted all of his knowledge to his kids, and they're probably better than he is now. But then unfortunately one of them just moved away, so now they're down to just two people, and because they're good, out here they get booked out like for weeks on end. So you can't just call them up and say, hey, I got a plumbing leak, can you come fix it? They're like, well, let me check my schedule, and they're all booked
yeah.
out, forever. So
That's worse when you need something done and you can't, and you're like, please, somebody take my money, and you can't get anyone to come do the thing.
yeah, yeah. Florida's weird about that kind of stuff. Like it's hard to find good reliable people that are not backed out forever.
Yeah, well, I think that's everywhere. So, like, I remember, like, I needed tree work done, and I started with some recommendations, wasn't getting anywhere, and just went to the phone book. And I don't know if any of you people remember phone books, but I
Yeah,
just started at A,
we're
and
so old.
yeah, I started at A and got to Davis, right, and I
Yeah,
hired him because he showed up.
there's a lot of that. Showing up is a good way to get hired for sure.
Yeah. But I went all, so it's just like, it's crazy when you just need things done and you're like, take my money, please, somebody. And they're like,
Yeah,
no.
exactly, exactly.
But, the games you're playing now, are they all D&D?
I'm playing in a Pathfinder 2e game right now on Saturdays, and that's the only game that I'm playing other than like I'm playing a Blood Bowl game that right now we're just doing online only Blood Bowl game. Well, all of them are online.
Yeah.
But I'm waiting for when the pandemic clears up and everybody gets vaccinated, then I can go out and start playing in person with that some more. And then I'm looking to play some more games. So I've got a new my gaming room is now mostly set up, and all my stuff's been unboxed. I had some of my stuff in boxes for years because when I moved from Kentucky to Florida originally, I actually went down in my size of my house a little bit. So
Yeah.
all my stuff stayed in boxes because I was like, well, I need to plan on how I'm going to organize it. Like we talked about before, it's like just how do you put everything out there. And I did like to use miniatures and that kind of stuff. So I think digital is probably going to be, where I'm going to do most of my gaming for a while now. But I do like still playing in person as much as possible.
Yeah, it's the experience for sure. So do you have like a Blood Bowl team that you main?
No, I swap. I like them all. I'm playing right now. My last one I played were Dark Elves, and Dark Elves are pretty good at, they can run the ball pretty good. They're good at dodging out of the way. Not the best at fighting because they're a little bit fragile, but they have this one type of character called an assassin that you can get. You can have two assassins on your team, and they're statistically, tactically horrible. Like they're not a good choice. You should get another type of thing. But they have this ability to just stab people, and it's like a cheating thing, so they can all get a free stab attempt, and it hardly ever works. But I figure if you add enough people that can stab people on the team, then eventually you'll get lucky, and some people are going to get stabbed. So that's what I try to do, and I had a lot of fun with that team. I actually got second place in our league. When I just started them out, and it's weird because with Blood Bowl, it's Games Workshop makes some really great kind of fun games that are episodic, kind of like role playing games.
Mhm.
But one of the things I like about it is your team, you carry over your experience from one game to the next. So if your guy gets injured and he gets handicapped, he's got the handicap for the rest of his career. You can't magically heal it up. You just know your guy actually like has a crippled leg now, so he moves 1 inch, he moves one space less than he did before. From that point on, but maybe he also learned how to like stab people better, or like something else that makes it so that you don't want to necessarily fire the player right away. So so that's what I'm playing right now. And then I just started on an online league, and I'm playing a goblin team, and their claim to fame is they're all horrible players, but they're really good at cheating. And in
Yeah.
fact, they can buy bribes. They can buy bribes from the ref at half cost. So when they get caught for cheating, they can attempt to bribe their way out of it. And so they have like secret weapons. So I've got one guy with a chainsaw, that he sneaks a chainsaw onto the field somehow, and he'll like chop people down with a chainsaw, and so that's pretty good. Another guy with a big ball and
Yeah.
chain that he spins it and hits people, and yeah.
It's just funny, the idea of sneaking a chainsaw onto the field amuses me.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
You
So
ever
so far I'm
consider like
0-3.
marrying? You ever consider marrying a game like that to an RPG?
Yeah, I mean that would be kind of cool actually. I like that kind of idea. I haven't really seen anybody do that too much, but that would be kind of neat.
Yeah. So like we were doing a session 0 for a game, and it was going to be we were using Open Legend. We let our patrons kind of like vote on the type of game we're going to play, the genre, and
Mm-hmm.
like fantasy, steampunk, and eldritch horror were really close. So I was like, all right, we'll just play that, right?
Yeah.
And in session 0, we started talking about sports, and we came up with this game called Etherball. And I feel like we were like this close to actually just playing an RPG about this sport in this made up world.
Oh yeah.
Um, but I think it'd be a lot of fun, like especially if you have a game with like rules like that already, where maybe you guys like stat out the characters, and then you can actually play out the game, and then
Yeah.
but then you can also do like the behind the scenes things of
That'd be
what's
cool.
happening
Yeah.
off the
Yeah.
field.
Yeah. That'd be really pretty cool, especially if you tied it back into the game somehow too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like one of the things we did with like so there was these like flying cities that were all kind of xenophobic, but the other ball teams would travel and they would play. So also like business deals and politics would be done at these games because it
Yeah.
was one of the few opportunities to interact with people from the other cities.
Have you ever seen X Crawl?
Yeah, we're
That's
actually. It's funny. Ted had pitched us a game that he wanted to run, and I was like, Ted, it's called X Crawl. Um, so yeah,
yeah.
we're actually getting ready to play that game. I'm going to be playing a chef character
Uh-huh.
that thought he was trying out for and signing up for a reality cooking show.
Nice, like Iron Chef type thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and ended up in the at the wrong table at a job fair or something.
Yeah. So that, I mean, I like the idea of that one. We almost played that one with my game group back in the day, and it just never really fully got off the ground for some reason. But yeah, I like the idea of that, where you basically, it's like Running Man,
Yeah,
and then you're like a TV personality that plays in this game, but then it's all the like going out seeking endorsements, and role playing out those things, or maybe having like a secret mission inside of the other,
it's
inside of
just
the
such a
other game.
ridiculous, over the
Yeah,
top idea that it's funny.
completely over the top. Yeah, and you have a signature move. You get more star like fan points if you can pull off your signature move in the game or something like that. So yeah, that
So
kind of
I
stuff's
don't know
pretty
how
fun.
much of that stuff will get incorporated because we're going to use the 5e rule set.
Okay, yeah.
Um, but I think it was Goodman Games that put out X Crawl.
Yeah, I don't remember. That's a
And
Google.
I think Ted ordered the book when we're talking. I was like, because he's like, yeah, I want
Yep.
to do a reality TV show, but it's dungeon crawls and like there's
Yeah.
cameras that follow you into the dungeon.
Yeah.
And I was like, Ted, that's an awesome idea that someone did 20 years ago.
That's the thing is there's all these brilliant ideas you think you have is probably other people have already had them too, but that's all right. It's all good.
Nah, there's nothing wrong with that. And we're nerds, so sometimes people get all like anxious, like they stole my idea. Like, no, there's only so many ideas out there, and it's more than likely you just both came up with it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And that's to me, I mean, uh, to me it raises interest in other stuff. So like if you were to come out with something kind of like an X crawl and start playing it, then people are gonna be like, oh, that's kind of like X crawl, and then people go and look up what is X crawl, and then
Yeah.
next thing you know, I mean, you get more followers and fans that way too. So
Yeah, so
it works out.
we're looking forward to that one. I don't know, we might do some kind of like fan interaction with that game as
Yeah.
well, because I know like years ago we had talked about doing a like a Hunger Games
Yeah.
style game, which is kind of X Crawl too, I guess,
A
pretty
little bit.
much.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're similar. Yeah, it's a game within a world. Yeah.
But the idea of having patrons that could like drop you stuff to increase your chances or help you, or the opposite of that.
Yeah. They drop some horrific monsters in next to you. Like, we want
Yeah,
to see this character get killed. Yeah. No,
and Tarask.
that's pretty cool. I like to take stuff from different games and mix and match them. Um, and so I forget where I took this idea from, but it was basically that and you may know, since you played probably a lot of games too. But the idea was that the players could help. They had like so many points they could use for like story points. So like, let's say you're investigating you know, a crime, somebody's missing or whatever, and you go to their
Mm,
house and they're not there, and you're looking at the clues that are in the house, and that's all part of the built-in story, right? So that, you know, you just say, you know, you do your search roll, you're looking for stuff, you do or don't find it, but then maybe you want to use one of your story points to then try to weave a part of your own story into it and be like, oh, I see that the neighbor's out cutting their lawn. I'm going to go talk to the neighbor that's cutting their lawn. And the DM never said anything about a character cutting his lawn.
yeah,
You created that as part of the aspect, and then you give him one of your story points, and then the DM can decide to take it and run with it and be like, oh yeah, he said he doesn't live here. He's a hired, you know, guy that cuts lawns for everywhere. So and they're like, oh, do you know that? But you could have like a dialogue that becomes player created part of the story and go back and forth, or the DM might take it and run with it, and it ends up being like, you know, like that one random guy that the players meet at the tavern that they get all fixated on this one character, and then they want to know all about their backstory, you know, and that ends up becoming the most memorable part of the entire campaign that, you know, the players always reflect back on after the fact and like, oh yeah, remember that one, you know, player Bob the Weaver that we met and oh how awesome he was, and you're like, yeah, that guy was just completely made up on the fly, you know, like
yeah.
that kind of stuff is what, you know, I always like to see, you know, in games.
Yeah, there's a lot of games that like do that. You know, Fate, Savage Worlds, Mutants and Masterminds all had some kind of Benny you could spend and like
Mm-hmm.
edit the scene a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like 5e underutilizes a lot of the mechanics they introduced. It's
Mm-hmm.
like they kind of came up with some really good ideas and then just stopped. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because they don't want to do complexity, add more complexity into the game, or maybe one day they'll just do a supplement that's all about it. But I feel
Yeah.
like inspiration and hit dice are like two mechanics that are really cool and could have a lot of other uses, but they
Mm.
don't.
Yeah. Yeah. How are you gonna spin your hit dice? Yeah, for sure. Instead of just healing out in between.
Yeah, like we did a small like supplement heroics to hit dice where it's just like a bunch of alternate spends for your hit dice.
Cool. Yeah.
We'll probably do something similar with inspiration at some point as well. You know, more interesting ways, and plus, like, you know, we don't. First of all, we don't use it right, and it took me playing with other people to realize that we just changed it, and I forgot.
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Yeah. Yeah.
so like we just like, oh, it's a reroll whenever you want to use it. We don't
Oh,
we
okay.
don't
Yeah. Yeah.
require people to call it before they use it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, in theory, we're like, a lot of times we try to do it so it's like You got to call it before you know the result, but you can call it after you roll the die.
And it's sometimes hard to do those kind of things in the VTT world because the results just pop up immediately. Like you just drop it on there and it tells you, oh no, you hit, you missed, and
Oh yeah, yeah.
you know. So you have to think a little bit outside the box on a couple of those things already. So I'm a big fan of just incorporating whatever makes your game seem like it runs smoother, just in general, and just bring stuff in, because that makes it more interesting to me. As long as it's consistent within your own world and your own play group, then I think it's pretty fun.
Nah, that's totally the truth. I mean, consistency is the most important thing. It doesn't actually matter how you play the game as long as you're consistent and everyone at the table agrees.
Yeah, and
It
it's
works.
the consistency is there for the fun factor, and so that people know how to plan their moves and how they're going to do that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. It's not about it should never be about like GM versus players, that kind of stuff, because unless your game is built around that as a core concept and everybody's like, oh yeah, let's play a GM versus player thing, and then maybe that might work too.
I don't know
And
who signs
who
up for that
knows?
one.
Who knows? But yeah, it seems like it'd be a little slanted, but I
Well,
guess
maybe people that didn't like grow up gaming in like the 80s, they
yeah.
might be on board because they haven't lived it yet. Where the rest of us, it just like triggers us.
Yeah, I mean, you could do it, I guess, if you had a lot of rules that govern what the GM was capable of doing, then you could probably do a pretty fun thing that would be almost more like a board game kind of an approach to gaming, and that could be fun. I mean, I think some of the board games, like I used to play when D&D 3.5 was out, they had their D&D minis with like the cards had on one side it was the actual full D&D 3.5 stats,
Mm,
and on the back was like the D&D minis version of the stats, which was like basically streamlined a bit.
yeah,
Like you would just do 5 points of damage. You wouldn't even roll like the damage. It wouldn't be 7 points of damage or
it
three
was
points, and
there
then
was
you
like
had
a
to track it.
skirmish
It was
game.
Yeah, it was like a just skirmish game, and it was
Did
pretty
they
fun because
call
then
it
you could just put
chainmail?
no, chainmail was back in the day. Even before that, there was a chainmail.
Yeah, yeah, that was the original like Genesis for D&D. But
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of the name of the game
Oh
that you're
yeah, yeah,
talking about. Ted probably knows
yeah.
if he's still in the chat. I remember him having the
I don't
cards
know.
and playing it.
I think I just called it D&D minis, but it might have been something else. I don't know. But I used to have, so I actually got my wife to play that. She played it some too because she had fun picking out like, so I found it was good to handicap because, like by default, you would play 100 points versus 100 points. And my wife didn't like miniatures games as much, but
Yeah,
she liked the, cool characters and that kind of stuff, but she wasn't like as into the tactical nitty-gritty stuff. So I would be like, okay, well, I'll give her 150 points and I'll take 100 so that it was more balanced. Or we would just, we would adapt it because sometimes she would slaughter me really easily that way. I'm like, okay, so maybe
yeah.
I'm only going to give you 120 next time, and we'd play. But it was a fun way where we could like have different, like I would think of scenarios that I thought would be interesting. Like what would happen if a group of Drow and their allies came across, a bunch of Svirfneblin and their allies, and then you'd play out this battle like that where the Svirfneblin have a earth elemental on their side, versus the Drow had, whatever. So I just thought it was kind of fun to play that, and it would be like a little bit of, uh, you could even add a little bit of role playing element to it if you really wanted to, but it was just playing out like little scenarios, like little mini RPG scenarios.
You could do that with HeroScape as well,
Mm-hmm.
which was a lot of fun. Actually, I don't actually now. I'm gonna have to break that out. I feel like. I mean, my wife will play, my son will play. We're all stuck here. Why
Yeah,
not?
yeah, yeah,
And that used to be fun. Like part of the fun for that was like building the boards or whatever.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's HeroScape. I only have one of those, and it was like a superhero one that
oh
I got for
yeah,
my son. So I had
my
like
God,
Spider-Man and Doctor Doom and stuff like that.
I
It
spent
was pretty cool.
way too much money on HeroScape. Nah,
They're relaunching it. Didn't Hasbro just relaunch it on their
that's
new
Hero Quest,
Hero Quest? Oh, you're right. You're right.
which is
You're right.
also a very cool game from I guess that came out in the 80s or 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, yeah, they launched that, and I don't know if they launched it. That's where they launched Pulse, their crowdfunding
Yeah,
platform, or if that was something before or not. But that's where I seen it for the first time.
yeah, yeah. That Pulse thing is kind of interesting, like their own very own crowdfunding thing, which is
Yeah,
kind of smart if you think about it, because you've done Kickstarter, so you know how much Kickstarter takes, right?
yeah,
which is which is good because they have great visibility. But if you're a big company like Hasbro, you've already got the visibility. Then
it works for them, but it wouldn't work for
It wouldn't
anybody
work for
else.
it wouldn't work for anybody else.
For
Yeah.
like, I mean, just like you said, you've done Kickstarter, so we know that most of our backers come from people that don't know who we are.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, so like the marketing aspect of it, they do take a lot, but it's kind of worth it
Yeah.
for the visibility. So we're just past the hour mark here. Final thoughts before we head on out?
No, I would just say everybody stay safe and hopefully have a good switch over into 2021 and things start to look up for people. And yeah, just keep gaming.
Yep. And as always, folks, down in the description, you can find a bunch of links to go follow Fantasy Grounds and check it out. As well as once this isn't live anymore, it'll be over in the pinned comment as well. So until next time, stay nerdy.